I had just finished watering the geraniums on the windowsill when I heard the familiar sound of Raphael's car in the yard. The engine was running rough. My son kept putting off repairs, even though I had offered to give him money for a new car more than once. Through the glass, I saw him get out of the shabby sedan, followed by Soledad, wearing a bright pink blouse that I always thought made her look like a flamingo. They walked quickly, almost marching toward the house, and I knew at once that this was serious business. I opened the door before I could say hello, and Raphael walked past me into the living room without taking off his shoes. Soledad at least nodded, but she walked too, leaving wet footprints on the tile. I sighed and followed them. Mom, we need to talk, Raphael said, sinking into my favorite chair by the window. He sounded like he was about to announce something very important and useful to me. Soledad sat down next to him on the couch, placing a large black bag on her lap. Of course, son. Would you like some tea or coffee? I started toward the kitchen, but Raphael stopped me with a gesture of his hand. No need. Sit down, please. I sat down on the edge of the couch, away from Soledad. There was something about their behavior I didn't like. Raphael pulled folded sheets of paper from his shirt pocket and spread them out on the coffee table. Mom, Soledad and I have been thinking about it. Your cafe on the waterfront. Your father's cafe, I corrected him. Yes, the cafe. It's not making any money. The manager called last week, saying that revenue was down for the third month in a row. There are fewer tourists, the locals are going to new places. I knew the conversation he was talking about. Jorge, my manager, did complain about the drop in revenue, but it was temporary. The season was just starting, and last year at this time last year, it was a similar situation. So what do you suggest? I asked, though I could already guess by the look on my son's face. Soledad leaned forward as if she wanted to get closer to me. Esperanza, we found buyers for the land. A construction company is willing to pay very good money. They want to build a residential complex there. Apartments with sea views. Demolish the cafe? I couldn't believe my ears. Mom, understand. Raphael took the sheets of paper in his hands, shook them. These are documents for the transfer of ownership. You just sign, we'll formalize everything, and in a month you'll have a sum of 6 zeros in your account. 6, Mom. I looked at the papers, which already bore the signatures of my son and daughter-in-law, and felt my insides clench. Ernesto's Cafe had been on the waterfront for 30 years. My late husband had opened it when Raphael was 19. We put all our savings into it and worked there 12 hours a day to get the business back on its feet. Raphael, it's in memory of his father. Mom, Dad died 15 years ago, my son raised his voice. 15! Are you going to cling to the past all your life? I don't cling to it, I remember. You can remember without this unprofitable institution, Soledad intervened. Esperanza, think about it. You are 75 years old. Why should you go to all this trouble? Sign the papers, get the money, live in peace. I got up from the couch and went to the window. In the yard, there was an old cherry tree, which Ernesto and I had planted in the first year of our marriage. It was in full bloom now, white petals falling to the grass. What if I don't want to sell? There was silence. I turned around. Raphael was looking at me as if I'd said something I didn't understand. What do you mean you don't want to sell? He got up slowly from his chair. Mom, do you realize how much money this is? I do. Then what's the problem? The problem is that this isn't just land. It's where my father what? Raphael started raising his voice. Where he worked his ass off for pennies? Where we all worked our asses off to make ends meet? Where he was happy, I said quietly. Happy? Raphael laughed, but it was an angry laugh. Mom, you see what's going on in the family. Gustavo is getting married. He needs money for the apartment, for the wedding. Soledad and I are having a hard time, too. The car is falling apart. The apartment needs repairs. And you're sitting on a pile of real estate and you don't want to help your own family. I've always helped you when you needed it. I've helped you with little things. He waved his hands. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. This is real money we're talking about here. Soledad stood up and came over to me. Esperanza, we're not strangers. We're your family, and we have a right. The right to what? The right to an inheritance. She said it very simply, as if it were something perfectly natural. In my lifetime? Are you going to live forever? Raphael blurted out. I looked back at him. My son, the one I'd born, nurtured, and raised alone after my husband's death, was standing in front of me, red with anger, looking at me as if I were his enemy. Raphael, how can you say that? How else? He came closer. Mom, how many times? You don't need so many possessions at your age. You live alone in a 3-room apartment, you have a summer house, you have this cafe, there are 2 other apartments that you rent out. What do you need so much money for? It's mine, I said. It's yours, he almost shouted. Who are we? Aren't we family? Family doesn't mean I have to give away everything I have. It's not giving it away, it's helping. Mom, I'm your only son. And that's why you'll get everything when I die. After you die, Raphael clutched his head. Now I'm supposed to live a miserable existence until I'm old? Soledad works in a supermarket for a pittance. I work in an auto parts store. We'll never have decent money if you don't help us. I'm not stopping you from making money. No, you're not. Thank you very much. He turned to his wife. Soledad, explain it to her. Soledad nodded and came back to me. Esperanza, think about it. The cafe is unprofitable. The land is getting more expensive every year. If we sell now, we'll win everything. You'll get more money than the cafe will bring in 10 years. We can help Gustavo. We can buy a better apartment for ourselves. And let the memory of Ernesto go to hell, right? Esperanza. Esperanza what? I felt anger boiling up inside me. You want to tear down the place where your father and I were truly happy for money. Mom, Raphael spoke slowly now as if he were talking to a retard. Dad is dead, 15 years dead. The cafe won't bring him back to life. Will money make you happy? At least it'll give us a normal life. You already have a normal life. Fine. Raphael slammed his fist on the table. Mom, do you realize how much everything costs now? Groceries, utilities, gasoline? We can barely make ends meet. Then get a better job. At our age? Soledad spoke up. Esperanza, we're not in our 20s anymore. Who will take us to good jobs? What's that got to do with me? Because you are our mother, shouted Raphael. Because you have the opportunity to help your family and you don't want to do it out of principle. It's not principle, it's memory. What memory? He waved his hands. An old shabby cafe that nobody visits. Mom, wake up. Dad would have told us to sell it if he'd seen what it's become. Don't you dare speak for your father. What do you know about what he'd say? The last time you spoke to him was 15 years ago. Those words hit me like a slap in the face. I turned away to the window, feeling my eyes begin to sting with tears. Mom, Raphael's voice softened. I don't want to upset you, but we have to live realistically. The cafe is making losses, the land costs a lot of money. It's logical to sell it and live in peace. I'm not selling my father's cafe. Then you're selfish, Raphael said quietly. I turned around. What? I said you're selfish. You think only of yourself, of your memories. You don't think about us, that we have lives, plans, needs? Raphael. Raphael, what? It's true, Mom. You're sitting on money like a dragon on gold, and you won't even share it with your own family. You're always giving us handouts, he interrupted me. A few thousand for my birthday, a few thousand for medicine. And when it comes to real help, you hide behind the memory of your father. Raphael, stop it. No, I won't. He came very close. Mom, you're 75 years old. 75 years old. You're not going to live forever. And when you die, it's all going to be mine anyway. So why not do it now, when you really need it? Because I'm still alive. And you want to live to be 100, clinging to every brick in this goddamn cafe. Don't you dare say that. How else? Raphael was already screaming. Mom, you're a mean old woman. A mean, stubborn old woman who thinks of no one but herself. Soledad tugged at her husband's sleeve. Raphael, don't. You must. He shook off her hand. Let him know the truth. Mom, you're clinging to the past like a drowning man to a straw. Dad's dead, the cafe's dying, and you're hanging on. You don't care if your son lives like a beggar. You're not living like a beggar. I do, compared to how I could live. Mom, how long can you be like this? Like this? What? So insensitive, to your own family. I looked at my son and didn't recognize him. Where was that boy whom I rocked in my arms, whom I read stories to, whom I taught to ride a bicycle? In front of me stood a stranger with a red face and angry eyes. If you don't sign these papers, he said, grabbing the documents from the table, then know that you are choosing a dead husband over a living son. Raphael! That's right, Mom, you are. He turned and walked toward the door. Soledad followed him, but on the threshold she turned around. Esperanza, think, we are not your enemies. We just want a better life. Soledad! Called her husband from the hallway. The door slammed so hard that the glass in the windows shook. I heard the sound of the car starting, then the sound of the engine leaving, and silence. I sank into the chair where Raphael had just sat and stared at the door for a long time. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing. I picked up my phone and dialed Remedios' number. Remedios, it's Esperanza. Can you come over? I need to talk to you. Of course, darling. What's wrong? You sound strange. I'll tell you. Remedios lived next door, and 15 minutes later she was sitting on my couch holding a cup of tea that I'd put out to cool. She was looking at me carefully over 40 years of friendship. She'd learned to read my mood on my face. Tell me, she said simply, and I did. About the documents Raphael had brought, about the demand to sell the cafe, about my son yelling at me and calling me selfish. Remedios listened silently, only occasionally shaking her head. And did he really say you'd choose a dead husband over a living son? She asked when I had finished. He did. That's disgusting, Remedios set the cup on the table. Esperanza, did you ever think he might be right about the cafe? You know, about the money? I looked at her, surprised. Do you think I should sell too? That's not what I mean. It's just, the cafe really doesn't bring in much money. And Raphael and Soledad don't live very well, it's true. But that's no reason to talk to me like that. Of course not. Remedios took my hand. He behaved abominably. But, Esperanza, maybe we should consider a compromise. What kind of compromise? I don't know. Give them money, but don't sell the cafe. Or sell something else. They want this particular land. They say it's worth a lot. Because you can build high-rises overlooking the sea, Remedios nodded. Yes, I heard that the whole waterfront is slowly being built up. Exactly. And I don't want a concrete box to replace Ernesto's cafe. I know what you mean, honey. We didn't talk for a while. It was starting to get dark outside the window, and the streetlights were on. You know what upset me the most? I said. Not the way he yelled. It was the way he looked at me, like I was an obstacle, like something that was getting in the way of his life. Children can be ungrateful sometimes, Remedios said quietly. My daughter isn't always either, but not to this extent. He bluntly said that at my age I don't need so many possessions, as if I should already prepare for death and give everything away. Does Gustavo know about this conversation? Of course not. Raphael wouldn't tell him. It's a pity. Gustavo is a good boy. He wouldn't approve of his father's behavior like this. I nodded. My grandson was really the only one in the family who treated me with real affection, not just politeness. What are you going to do now? Remedios asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. I guess I'll wait until Raphael cools down and calls. And if he doesn't? I shrugged. To be honest, I wasn't sure my son would want to reconcile. There was too much anger in his eyes when he left. I woke up the next morning with a heavy head and a bad feeling in my soul. Yesterday's scandal with Raphael replayed in my head like a broken record. I lay in bed for a long time staring at the ceiling and thinking about my son calling me selfish. Maybe he was right. Maybe I really am holding on to the past too much. After breakfast, I decided to go to a cafe. I wanted to see with my own eyes the place, because of which yesterday I almost quarreled with my son forever. I put on a light blue dress, took my purse, and left the house. The bus to the embankment was half an hour, and all the way I looked out the window at the familiar streets of our city, which in recent years has changed a lot. There were new shopping centers, high-rise buildings, wide avenues. Progress did not stand still. The Cafe Ernesto's was located at the very end of the embankment, where the tourist flow was not as dense as in the center. I got off the bus and slowly walked along the familiar path. The sea splashed on the left, on the right stretched low houses, cafes, souvenir shops. Many of them were new, bright, modern, with large glass windows and neon signs. My cafe looked old-fashioned against their background. It was a low building with whitewashed walls, a red tile roof, and an old wooden sign that Ernesto had made with his own hands. The paint was peeling in places, the corners blackened by sea salt and wind. Yes, Raphael was right. It didn't look very presentable. Jorge, my manager, was just taking the plastic tables outside. He had worked here for 8 years under Ernesto and knew the place better than I did. Señora Esperanza! He was happy to see me. How good of you to come. Hello, Jorge, how are you? Oh, just a little. He set the table down and wiped his hands on his apron. Yesterday there were 20 people, this morning only 3 so far. We went inside. The cafe was small, only 12 tables, a small bar, and an open kitchen. The walls were decorated with old photographs of our town, seascapes that Ernesto had once bought from local artists. The floor was simple ceramic tile, the furniture plain, wooden, no frills. Jorge, is it true that things aren't going well? He scratched the back of his head, thought. Well, how can I put it, Señora? Bad is an understatement. But things haven't gotten any better. We used to have both locals and tourists. Now the locals go more to the new places. They have Wi-Fi, music, and air conditioning. And tourists also prefer something more modern. How much do we make a month? In a good month, 40,000. In a bad month, 25,000. Expenses are about 20,000. Wages, groceries, utilities. I did some quick math in my head. The net profit was between 5 and 20,000 pesos a month. It wasn't much, but it wasn't a loss. So, we're not at a loss after all? No, we're not. It's just a small profit. But you don't pay any rent or credit. If we had to rent this place, yes, we'd definitely be at a loss. I walked down the hall, stopped at the window overlooking the sea. From here, I had a beautiful view of the bay. The water was calm and blue today, with white clouds on the horizon. A few fishing boats bobbed near the shore. 30 years ago, Ernesto had brought me here on his old motorcycle. The place was empty then, just the foundations of some unfinished building, but Ernesto saw the potential. Esperanza, he said at the time. Imagine a small, cozy cafe, tables outside, a view of the sea. People will come here to drink coffee, eat fish, watch the sunsets. I thought he was crazy. We had very little money. I worked as a clerk in a stationery store. He worked as a mechanic at a motor depot. Where would we get the money to build a cafe? But Ernesto was persistent. He took part-time jobs. I saved every peso. We took out a loan, sold the car, borrowed from relatives. We built it for almost 3 years by ourselves, weekends and evenings. Ernesto studied construction from books, and I helped as much as I could. Raphael was a teenager then, and he also carried bricks and stirred mortar. When the cafe finally opened, we worked here from morning till night. Ernesto cooked. He was great at frying fish and making traditional Mexican dishes. I served the tables, kept the books, and bought the food. The first few years were very hard. There were few customers and barely enough money to live on. But gradually things got better. Tourists began to recognize our place and recommend it to each other. The locals also appreciated the home-cooked food and low prices. After about 5 years, the cafe began to bring in a steady income, and we were able to hire an assistant and then a second cook. Ernesto was happy here. He loved talking to the guests, telling them stories about our city, and preparing his own specialties. In the evenings, we would often sit at a table by the window, drinking coffee and looking out at the sea. He said this place was the fulfillment of his dream. Señora, Jorge interrupted me. Would you like some coffee? Yes, thank you. He brought me a cup of flavored coffee and a plate of cookies. I sat down at the same table by the window where I used to sit with Ernesto. Jorge, do you think there's anything you can do to improve things? Attract more customers? Well, we could do some renovations, he said cautiously. Upgrade the furniture, put in air conditioning, install internet. Maybe expand the menu, add something modern. Is that expensive? 100,000 maybe? Maybe a little more? I finished my coffee and pulled out my phone to check the time. A notification of new messages popped up on the screen. Gustavo had written it. I opened the chat and saw several pictures. In the first picture, my grandson had his arm around a pretty girl with long dark hair. They were standing in some park, both smiling at the camera. The second photo was taken in a jewelry store. Gustavo and his girlfriend were looking at rings in the window. The third showed them kissing in front of a fountain. Attached to the photos was a message. Grandma, meet Palomita. We have decided to get married. The wedding will be next month. I'm so happy. I smiled looking at these pictures. Gustavo looked really happy, and his bride seemed like a nice girl. I immediately dialed my grandson's number. Gustavo, my darling, Grandma, have you seen the pictures? Of course I've seen them. Congratulations, she's very beautiful. Isn't she? You could hear the joy in my grandson's voice. Grandma, she's so wonderful, smart, kind, funny. You'll love her, I'm sure. How long have you two known each other? Almost a year now. She works at a beauty salon, studying to be a hairstylist by correspondence. She's very talented. And the wedding's really in a month? Yes, it's almost ready. We've booked the restaurant, sent out the invitations. It's going to be a small wedding, 50 people. You'll come, won't you? Of course, darling. Where will you live? At her parents' place for now. They have a big house. Then we'll see if we can get our own place. What are her parents' names? Mom's Carmen, Dad's Octavio. You'll like them, very simple and hospitable people. We talked for another 10 minutes. Gustavo talked about the wedding plans, where the ceremony would take place, what dress Palomita had chosen. Listening to his enthusiastic voice, I felt a rush of warmth and joy. It's good to have such bright events in the family. Gustavo, how did your parents feel about your plans? Normal, answered the grandson, but I felt in his voice some uncertainty. Dad, of course, says that it's too early to get married, that you must first make a career. But Mom supported him. She said that love is more important than money. Does it cost a lot to get married? Yes, of course. But Palomita and I are saving money. She's sewing the dress herself. The cake will be simple, the flowers will be ordinary. That's not what's important, is it? Yes, darling, the important thing is that you're happy. After talking to my grandson, I was in a much better mood. I sat a little longer in the cafe, watched the rare visitors, talked to the cook. Then I said goodbye to Jorge and walked to the bus stop. On the way, I thought about what I had seen and heard. The cafe did need updating, but it wasn't unprofitable as Raphael had claimed. It was just that the profits were small. And yes, maybe if they invested in renovations, things would get better. On the other hand, the land for the cafe was really worth a lot of money. And that money could be useful to the family Gustavo for the wedding and the apartment, Raphael and Soledad for a better life. But every time I imagined a concrete high-rise taking the place of our little cafe, my heart sank. It wasn't just a building, it was part of my life, my history with Ernesto. Sitting on the bus and looking out the window at the scenery passing by, I still couldn't find the right answer. What was more important, remembering the past or helping my family in the present? The week after our scandal with Raphael passed in a strange silence. Every day I waited for my son to call, to apologize, to offer to talk calmly. After all, we are a family, and family quarrels must sooner or later end in reconciliation. At least, that's the way it's always been before. But the phone was silent. Raphael didn't call, didn't come, didn't even send messages. I wanted to call him myself several times, but each time I stopped. What to say? That I was ready to sell the cafe? But I wasn't ready. That I apologized? But for what? Protecting my husband's memory. The days dragged on and on. In the morning, I had breakfast, read the paper, watered the flowers. In the afternoon, I watched TV or went to the store. In the evening, I talked to Remedios on the phone. We talked about the weather, the news, the neighbors, everything except what I really cared about. I felt guilty, though I didn't realize exactly what it was. Maybe I really should have at least listened to Raphael's proposal. To think about a compromise? But every time I pictured the demolition of the cafe, I felt my insides tighten. Gustavo called every other day talking about the wedding preparations. I listened to his joyful voice and thought that soon I would see him in a groom's suit, that I would sit in the restaurant and watch him dance with his young wife. These thoughts warmed my soul. Tuesday night, as I was washing the dishes after dinner, the phone rang. Raphael's name appeared on the display. My heart jumped. Finally. Raphael! I grabbed the phone before it even rang 2 rings. Hello, Mom. My son's voice was strange. Cold, formal, as if he was talking not to his mother, but to some stranger. Honey, I'm so glad you called. I was so worried. Mom, there's something I need to tell you. Something in his tone made me suspicious. I turned off the water, wiped my hands with a towel. I'm listening. Soledad and I have made a decision about Gustavo's wedding. What decision? We've decided not to invite you. For the first second, I didn't understand what he said. It was like the words were in the air, not coming through. What? What did you say? I said we decided not to invite you to Gustavo's wedding. After our last conversation, Soledad and I feel that your presence might spoil the festivities. I slumped back in my chair. My legs were wobbling. Raphael, are you serious? I'm dead serious. Mom, we don't want any scandals at the wedding. And given your behavior last week. My behavior? I couldn't believe my ears. Raphael, you were the one who yelled at me. You're the one who called me selfish. Because you're being selfish, and we don't want it to affect the mood of the young people. But this is my grandson's wedding, my only grandson. And that's why we want it to be calm, without conflict. I tried to collect my thoughts. This couldn't be real. My son couldn't forbid me to attend my own grandson's wedding. Raphael, listen to me. I realize we've had a fight. Yes, maybe we both should have been more restrained. But Gustavo's wedding is a different matter. It's a family event, and I should be there. No, Mom, you don't. Not after what happened. Does Gustavo know about your decision? A little pause. Gustavo will understand. We'll explain it to him. So he doesn't know yet? Mom, it's none of your business. We're parents. We make the decisions. But I'm his grandmother, who prefers a dead husband to a living family. Those words hit me like a slap in the face. I felt my eyes start to sting with tears. How can you say that? Very simply, because it's the truth. The tube was snatched from his hands, and I heard Soledad's voice. Esperanza? It's me. Soledad, explain it to him. You're a reasonable woman. How can you forbid a grandmother to be at her grandson's wedding? Esperanza, understand that the wedding is the day of the young, the most important day of their lives. It shouldn't be marred by family conflicts. But what conflicts? I won't say anything about the cafe. Can we be sure of that? I've stopped talking. Do they really think I'm capable of causing a scandal at my own grandson's wedding? Soledad, I would never do anything to upset Gustavo. You know how much I love him. I know, but I also know how stubborn you are when it comes to this cafe. What if you start talking in front of the guests about how bad we are, how we want to take away your grandfather's memory? I would never... Esperanza. Soledad's voice became softer, almost sympathetic. Understand us correctly. We don't want to offend you. We just want the wedding to be perfect. No arguments, no tension, no unpleasant conversations. But I won't talk. Then why come? To sit in silence and suffer? So that everyone can see that everything is not smooth in the family? I didn't know what to say. Soledad's logic was twisted, but she spoke so convincingly that I began to doubt my own judgment. Besides, Soledad continued, think of Gustavo. Is it fair to make him choose between his parents and his grandmother on such an important day? But why should he have to choose? We're all family. We were one family. And now you've decided to put your principles ahead of family interests. Raphael answered the phone again. Mom, the decision has been made, and it's final. Raphael, please. Goodbye, Mom. The phone beeped briefly. I sat in the kitchen holding the silent phone, and I couldn't believe what was happening. Was it really true? Had my own son forbidden me to be at my grandson's wedding? At first I felt angry. What right do they have to make such decisions? Gustavo is my grandson. I love him more than life, and no one can forbid me to share joy with him on such an important day. Then came the despair. I imagined how the guests were gathering in the restaurant, how Gustavo in a white suit was leading his bride down the aisle, how they were exchanging rings and vows. I won't be there. I'll be sitting at home alone while my family celebrates without me. And finally, the pain. A deep, dull ache somewhere in my chest. Like I've been cut out of the family, declared an undesirable element. As if the love I had given my son all my life was no longer needed. I sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring out the window at the darkening yard. Then I dialed Remedios's number. Remedios? Can you come over? Please. Esperanza? What's wrong? You sound a little… Come here, I'll tell you. I'm on my way. 20 minutes later, Remedios was sitting across from me at the kitchen table. I put a cup of tea in front of her, but I couldn't drink it myself. The lump in my throat prevented me from swallowing. Tell me, she said, and I did. About Raphael's cold voice, about their decision not to invite me to the wedding, about how Soledad had explained it with concern for the young. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I spoke. I didn't try to stop them. They're such bastards, Remedios said quietly when I was done. Maybe they're right, I sobbed. Maybe I really am selfish. Esperanza, don't be silly. You've lived your whole life for your family. You raised your son alone after your husband died, helped him with money, babysat your grandson. But I don't want to sell the cafe. You're right not to. It's your property, your memory of your husband. No one has the right to force you to give it up. But now I won't see Gustavo's wedding, I cried again. My only grandson. How am I going to get through this? Remedios stood up, walked around the table, and put her arms around me. Esperanza, honey, don't cry. We'll think of something. What can we think of? They're parents. They're organizing the wedding. If they don't want to see me. And Gustavo? He doesn't know about their decision, does he? Raphael said they'd explain it to him. I wonder how they'll explain. Remedios has an angry tone in her voice. Will they say that Grandma is mean and can ruin the party? Probably. Have you thought of telling Gustavo the truth? He's a big boy. He can make his own decisions. I looked up at her. What if he supports his parents? Then he's not the boy we thought he was, Remedios said harshly. But I doubt it. Gustavo loves you. He won't let you miss his wedding. But I don't want to put him in the position of choosing between his parents and me. And Raphael and Soledad didn't want to? They've already given him that choice. They just haven't told him yet. We sat in the kitchen for a long time, drinking cooled tea and discussing the situation. Remedios offered different options: to call Gustavo, to talk to Palomita's parents, even to come to the wedding uninvited. But all of these options seemed wrong to me. You know what the most frustrating thing is? I said as my friend was leaving. It's not that they don't invite me, it's that they think I'm capable of ruining their grandson's party. Am I really that bad? You're not bad, Esperanza. You're just not what they want you to be. You're not ready to give up everything you have on demand. Maybe you should give… No, Remedios said firmly. If you give in now, they'll demand more and more. First the cafe, then the summer house, then the apartments. And in the end, you'll end up with nothing. After my friend left, I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep for a long time. My mind was reeling with fragments of today's conversation, with Gustavo's face from the pictures he'd sent a week ago. How would I tell him I couldn't be at his wedding? How will I explain that his parents consider my love for him less important than some family disagreement? And more importantly, what do I do next? Accept my son's decision? Fight it? And if I fight it, how? 3 days had passed since that horrible phone call with Raphael, and I still couldn't recover. Every morning I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, as if my heart were a stone. I had no appetite at all. My tea seemed bitter, and even my favorite TV shows couldn't distract me from my gloomy thoughts. Remedios came by every day trying to cheer me up, bringing fresh baked goods, telling me the news. But I could see the worry in her eyes. My friend realized that something serious was happening to me, that this story of the wedding band had hurt me much deeper than it might seem from the outside. Esperanza, you're losing weight, she said last night as we drank tea in the kitchen. When was the last time you ate properly? I shrugged. Honestly, I couldn't remember. A slice of bread in the morning, half a cup of broth at lunch. I couldn't eat anymore. You can't beat yourself up like this, Remedios continued. It's not your fault what happened. And if it was? I asked quietly. Maybe I really am too stubborn. Maybe I should have agreed to sell the cafe. Esperanza, stop it. You have every right to dispose of your property as you wish, and no one, not even your own son, can dictate terms to you. But her words were no consolation. I kept thinking of Gustavo. Tomorrow is his wedding, and I won't be there. I won't see him get excited before the ceremony. I won't help him fix his tie. I won't give him a hug after the reception. I won't bless him for married life like a grandmother should. The worst part was that Gustavo still didn't know anything. He had called me twice in those 3 days, telling me about the latest preparations, sharing his worries. His voice sounded so excited, so happy, that I didn't have the heart to tell the truth. How could I explain to my grandson that his parents didn't think it was appropriate to invite his grandmother to the most important day of his life? During the last conversation, Gustavo even asked, "Grandma, have you already chosen a dress for the wedding? I so want you to be the most beautiful grandma at the party." I barely held back my tears and mumbled something unintelligible about what else I was thinking. Gustavo laughed and said that I would look beautiful in any outfit. After that conversation, I realized I couldn't keep quiet anymore. Tomorrow is the wedding, and Gustavo has a right to know the truth. Let him decide for himself what he wants to do. But it wouldn't be fair to hide what's going on in the family from him. Friday morning, the day before the wedding, I got up earlier than usual, showered, put on my best navy blue dress, and went downtown to where Gustavo worked. He was a courier for the fast mail delivery service, which was located in a small office building near the main square. The trip took over an hour, first the bus to the center, then walking through the familiar streets. I walked slowly, all the while rehearsing in my mind the words I would say to my grandson. How to start the conversation. How to explain the situation without denigrating his parents. After all, Raphael is his father, and no matter how badly he behaves, Gustavo must take that into account. The fast mail office was on the first floor of a modern building. Through the large glass windows, I could see several desks where dispatchers sat taking orders. At the entrance were motorcycles and bicycles of couriers. Some were leaving on a call, some were just returning. I approached the guard, an older man in uniform. "Excuse me, may I ask when Gustavo Valenzuela will be finished? And who are you, if it's no secret?" "I'm his grandmother." The guard smiled. "Oh, you're the grandmother Gustavo always talks about. He loves you very much." "And I him," I replied, feeling my eyes start to sting. "He's on call right now, but he should be back soon. His workday ends at 7, but he can get off earlier if there are no orders." It was 7:30. I decided to wait. There was a small coffee shop next to the office, but I didn't want to sit inside. It was too stuffy. I settled down on a bench in the small square across the street and watched the entrance to quick mail. Time stretched slowly. I thought about the fact that at this time tomorrow, Gustavo would be getting ready for the ceremony. Palomita is probably already trying on the wedding dress she sewed herself. Raphael and Soledad are checking out the final details at the restaurant. And I'm sitting at home alone, trying to figure out how to spend the day. Should I go to Remedios or go to the movies? As long as I don't stay in the apartment, where every single thing will remind me of what's happening right now without me. At 7:10, a red motorcycle pulled up outside the office. A young man in a courier's uniform, jeans, a bright yellow t-shirt with the company logo on it, a backpack on his back, got off. Gustavo, my grandson. He took off his helmet, shook off his dark hair, and headed toward the entrance. Even from a distance, I could see he was in a good mood, walking briskly, bouncy, whistling a tune. I got up from the bench and walked toward him. Gustavo saw me when I was already 10 paces away from him. His face lit up with a joyful smile. "Grandma!" He rushed to me and hugged me tightly. "What a surprise! What are you doing here?" "I wanted to talk to you, honey." "Sure. I'm going to turn in my report and then we'll go to the cafe. Or your place. What's more convenient for you?" "Let's do it here." I nodded at a bench in the park. "In the fresh air." "Okay, wait 5 minutes." Gustavo disappeared into the office. I returned to the bench and tried once again to think about the upcoming conversation. The main thing was not to start with accusations against Raphael. Just tell the facts and let my grandson draw his own conclusions. A few minutes later, Gustavo came out of the office, already changed into his usual clothes-light jeans and a blue shirt. He sat down next to me and I immediately smelled his youth and energy. "So tell me what happened," he said, looking at me carefully. "You have a sad face." "Gustavo, I have something to tell you." And it's very difficult. Are you sick? He asked anxiously. No, darling, there's nothing wrong with my health. It's something else. I took a deep breath. Gustavo, I won't be able to come to your wedding tomorrow. He was silent for a few seconds, as if he didn't understand my words. What do you mean you can't? I wasn't invited. What do you mean you weren't invited? Gustavo's voice became tense. Grandma, your family. What invitation? Your parents decided I shouldn't come. Parents? Gustavo straightened up on the bench. Grandma, what are you talking about? What parents? I told him everything. I started with how Raphael and Soledad came a week ago with the papers to sell the cafe. I explained why I didn't want to sell the place his grandfather cared so much about. I told him about the scandal, about my son yelling at me and calling me selfish. Gustavo listened in silence, and with every word I said, his face grew darker and darker. When I got to yesterday's phone conversation, he couldn't take it anymore. Wait! You're saying that Dad called you on Tuesday and said you weren't invited to the wedding? Yes, but that's impossible. Gustavo jumped up from the bench. Grandma, that's not what Dad told me yesterday. What was it? He said you weren't feeling well and couldn't come, that you have a blood pressure problem and the doctor doesn't recommend worrying. I even wanted to come and see how you were doing, but Dad said you asked not to be disturbed before the wedding. I felt a chill run down my spine. So Raphael had lied to his son. He made it sound like I didn't want to go to the wedding. And you believed him? I asked quietly. Why wouldn't I? Gustavo sat back down, but on the edge of the bench, ready to jump up at any moment. Dad never lied to me about such serious matters. I thought you had a real health problem. Gustavo, I'm perfectly healthy, and I'd like nothing more than to be with you tomorrow. But then why did Daddy... He didn't finish, but I could see that he was beginning to realize the magnitude of what had happened. Grandma, are you saying that Dad forbade you to come to my wedding because of this cafe? Because I refused to sell it, yes. And he lied to me that you didn't want to come? I guess so. Gustavo got up and walked down the walkway. I watched him clench and unclench his fists, the muscles in his face tense. It's impossible, he said at last. Grandma, are you sure you understood Papa correctly? Gustavo, I'm telling you word for word what he told me. And Mom was also involved in this conversation? Yes, she said that a wedding is a day for the young and should not be marred by family conflicts. Family conflicts! Gustavo slammed his fist on the back of the bench. What conflicts? You're my grandmother, the closest person to me since Palomita. The tears finally broke through. I cried with relief. Gustavo realized he was on my side. He didn't think I was to blame for what had happened. My darling, I sobbed. I was so afraid to tell you. I thought you might think my parents were right. Right about what? He sat down next to me and took my hands in his. About forbidding you to be at my wedding? Grandma, that's absurd. But they say I could ruin the party. How can you spoil the party? By being there? By sitting there and being happy for me? They're afraid I'll start talking about our quarrel in front of the guests. Would you? Of course not. Gustavo, do you think I'm capable of making a scandal on a day like this? Of course not. He squeezed my hands tightly. Grandma, this is outrageous. How could they do that? I don't know, darling. They must really want me to sell the cafe. Don't you want to? I don't want to. It's in memory of Grandpa Ernesto, where he and I were happy. You're right not to, said Gustavo hotly. It's your property. Your right to decide what to do with it. We were silent. It was getting dark, the streetlights were on. Cars with their headlights on drove along the streets. Somewhere in the distance, music was playing, probably in one of the cafes on the next street. Grandmother, Gustavo said at last, I have a confession to make. The last few days I've been really worried. I didn't understand why you didn't call, why you weren't interested in the wedding preparations. You used to be so involved in everything, you wanted to know every detail. And now you're not saying a word. I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that I wasn't invited to your wedding? It's a good thing you told me now. Can you imagine what would have happened tomorrow? I'd be waiting for you, worrying about why you didn't show up. And then Dad would say I had a stroke or something. Yes, probably, Gustavo agreed grimly. Grandma, I'm ashamed of my parents. How could they do that? Honey, don't say that. They are your parents after all. Parents who lied to me and hurt the person I care about the most. Gustavo stood up again, walked down the path. No, this is wrong. It's completely wrong. What are you going to do? I'm going to go home and confront them. Gustavo, please don't fight with them because of me. Tomorrow is your wedding day. That's exactly why I'm not going to fight, he said firmly. I'll just confront them with the fact. What fact? That there's not going to be a wedding without you. I looked at him fearfully. Gustavo, what do you mean? I mean exactly what I said, Grandma. If you won't be at my wedding, there won't be a wedding. Honey, you can't cancel the wedding because of me. Think of Palomita, think of the guests, think of the money that's been spent. And think about the fact that this is the most important day of my life, and I want to share it with the people closest to me. And you're one of the closest. But parents will understand. They have to understand. And if they don't, then it's their problem, Gustavo said sternly. Grandma, you've been there for me my whole life, helped me with my homework when my parents were working, bought me gifts they couldn't afford, listened to my problems, gave me advice. And now, on the biggest day of my life, I have to do without you because of some stupid argument. But the cafe is your business. If you want to sell, sell. If you don't want to sell, don't sell. But that's no reason to deny you the right to be at my wedding. He's sitting next to me again. Grandma, promise me you'll come tomorrow. Gustavo, I don't know. If your parents don't want you to come. I don't care if my parents are against it. He raised his voice, then he realized and spoke more softly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell. But understand, this is my wedding, my choice, and I choose you. And Palomita? What will she say? Palomita adores you. She's asked 100 times when she'll get to know you better. Do you think she'll mind? I don't know. I do. She'll be glad. Gustavo stood up and held out his hand to me. Come on, I'll walk you to the bus stop. And tomorrow I'll meet you at the Sea Breeze restaurant at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And don't you dare not show up, Gustavo. No, Gustavo! Grandma, you have to be there. You have to be there. Otherwise, I can't get married. Honey, don't say that. I'm saying it because it's true. What kind of wedding is it without Grandma? He hugged me tightly and I felt my heart grow warm. My grandson, my dear boy, didn't leave me. He didn't believe his parents, didn't agree with their decision. Just promise me, I said, that you won't talk too harshly to Mom and Dad. It's your wedding tomorrow, after all. I promise I'll be polite but firm. I'll just explain to them that their decision is wrong and I'm not making it. And if they refuse, they won't, Gustavo said confidently. They wouldn't want their son to be left without a wedding because of something so stupid. We walked to the bus stop. Gustavo waited until my bus arrived and helped me into the bus. See you tomorrow, Grandma, he shouted after me. And don't change your mind. All the way home, I thought about the conversation with my grandson. On the one hand, I was happy. Gustavo supported me, did not believe the lies of parents. On the other hand, anxious. What if he really will cancel the wedding? Suddenly quarrel with Raphael and Soledad so that it will affect their relationship forever? But then I thought about what my grandson said. What kind of wedding is it without a grandmother? And I realized he was right. I should be there. I got to see him take his beloved's hand, see them exchange rings, see them dance their first dance. No matter what Raphael and Soledad say, tomorrow I'll be at my grandson's wedding. Saturday morning, I woke up at 7:30, even though my alarm was set for 8. My heart was beating as if I was going to an exam, not to my favorite grandson's wedding. All night I had strange dreams. I was late for the restaurant and couldn't find my way, or I arrived and the guards wouldn't let me in, or Gustavo got married without me, and I watched it through the window. After talking to my grandson last night, I calmed down a bit, but this morning the excitement returned with renewed vigor. What if Raphael and Soledad had changed Gustavo's mind? What if he decided that it was not worth ruining his relationship with his parents because of his grandmother? Young people sometimes change their minds under pressure. I got up, took a shower, and stood in front of the closet for a long time, choosing an outfit. I usually wore a dark blue dress with a jacket for family parties, but today I wanted to look especially good. I finally settled on the burgundy dress I'd bought a year ago. but had never found a reason to wear. It matched the black shoes with a small heel and my grandmother's pearl beads, the only jewelry I kept as a memory of my mother. I couldn't eat breakfast. I couldn't get anything down my throat but tea. Remedio sent a message, "Good luck today. Looking forward to a detailed story." She was the only one who knew about my plans. I told her about the conversation with Gustavo last night, and her friend was thrilled. "Finally, someone put Raphael in his place," she said. "That boy is golden. I just wish everything would go well. I was worried." "It will, you'll see. Gustavo is not the kind of man who changes his mind." By 1:30, I was ready to go. The restaurant Sea Breeze was in the center of the city, not far from the waterfront. Usually I got there in 40 minutes, but today I decided to leave with time to spare. There was nothing to worry about. Traffic jams, a bus breakdown, rain. Luckily, the weather was beautiful. Clear sky, light sea breeze, bright sunshine, a perfect day for a wedding. On the bus, I looked out the window at the streets running by and thought about the fact that in an hour I would see Gustavo in his groom's suit. What would he be like? Excited, happy, solemn? And what would Palomita look like? Gustavo showed me pictures of her dress. Simple, white, with a lace top. Very delicate and romantic. I got to the restaurant at 1:45. Seabreeze was located in a beautiful old building with columns and a wide staircase. The guests were already gathering in front of the entrance, smartly dressed people, most of whom I didn't know. Probably friends and colleagues of Gustavo and Palomita, relatives from the bride's side. I walked up the steps and stopped at the entrance. My heart was pounding so hard that I was afraid everyone would hear me. The lobby of the restaurant was noisy and crowded. Guests were registering with the receptionist, leaving gifts on a special table, taking pictures at the beautifully decorated archway. I looked around, searching for familiar faces. I didn't see Raphael or Soledad, but I did see Gustavo. He was standing against the far wall, surrounded by young men, probably friends or co-workers. He was wearing a dark blue suit, a white shirt, and a silver tie. He looked very mature and solemn, but excited at the same time. Next to him, in that very same white dress with the lace top, stood Palomita. She was even more beautiful than in the photographs. Thin, graceful, with long dark hair gathered in an elegant style. On her head, she wore a small wreath of white flowers. I stood at the entrance, watching my grandson. He was talking animatedly with his friends, laughing, but I could see that he was a little nervous, either fixing his tie or running his hand through his hair. Every now and then, his gaze slid down the hall, like he was looking for someone. Me, I guess. I took in a lungful of air and headed toward him. The guests parted in front of me, some smiling, mistaking me for a relative or family friend. I was about 10 meters away from Gustavo when someone called out to me, "Esperanza." I turned around. Raphael and Soledad were walking toward me. His son was in a black suit with a white shirt, his daughter-in-law in a dark green dress down to her knees. Both looked dressed up and solemn, but their faces were grim. "What are you doing here?" Raphael asked sharply, stepping close to me. "I came to my grandson's wedding," I said as calmly as I could. "We explained to you that you weren't invited. Gustavo invited me." "Gustavo is still young?" "He is 23 years old, Raphael." "Esperanza," Soledad intervened, trying to keep her voice low so as not to attract the attention of the guests. "Why did you come? We agreed." "We didn't agree on anything. You forbade me and I didn't agree." "Mom," Raphael grabbed my hand. "Don't make a scene. Go now. Let me go. If you don't leave, I'll call security." At that moment, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around and there was Gustavo. His face was serious, even stern. "Dad, get your hands off Grandma." "Gustavo, you and I just talked about everything." "We didn't discuss anything. You told me Grandma wasn't coming because she wasn't feeling well, and now I see that you lied." "Son, you don't understand. I understand everything. You told Grandma not to come to my wedding, and you lied to me that she didn't want to come." The conversation was starting to draw attention. Several guests were looking in our direction. Some even paused to listen. "Gustavo, not here," Soledad said quietly. "Let's talk in a separate room." "No," replied the grandson firmly. "Here and now, in front of everyone." He turned to the assembled guests and raised his voice. Dear friends, may I have your attention, please? The hall gradually quieted down. Everyone turned to Gustavo, waiting to see what he would say. I saw the pale faces of Raphael and Soledad. I want you to meet the person who is dearest to me, Gustavo said loudly, putting his arm around my shoulders. This is my grandmother, Esperanza Valenzuela. She raised me when my parents were working. She taught me to read, helped me with my lessons, bought me my first books. She was always there for me when I was having a hard time. The guests smiled, some nodding with understanding. Many of them must have loved their grandmothers too. And today, Gustavo continued, on the most important day of my life, my parents have decided that my grandmother has no place at my wedding. The hall became very quiet. I felt myself blush with embarrassment, but Gustavo held me tightly by the shoulders. They told her she wasn't invited, his grandson continued, and they lied to me that she didn't want to come. I heard a quiet gasp from one of the guests. Raphael tried to say something, but Gustavo interrupted him. Dad, Mom, I understand that you and Grandma have your differences, but a wedding is not a place for family quarrels. It's a day of love and joy, and I can't be happy if I don't have the people closest to me. He turned to me. Grandmother, shall we go to our table? Gustavo took me by the hand and led me across the hall to the table of honor, which stood on a small dais. Palomita was already seated at it, and there was an empty seat beside her. Gustavo led me to the chair to the right of the bride. Palomita, he said, get acquainted with my grandmother. The girl stood up and smiled warmly at me. Señora Esperanza! At last we have met! Gustavo has told me so much about you! She hugged me in such a sincere and friendly way that my eyes pinched again. Palomita, darling, congratulations. You are a very beautiful bride. Thank you, and you're so elegant. This dress suits you very well. Gustavo helped me to sit down, then took the seat to Palomita's left. I found myself in the center of the table of honor, in the most prominent place. Gustavo, I said quietly, maybe I should sit at the regular table. I don't want to cause any inconvenience. Grandmother, you stay here, he answered firmly. Next to us. I looked around. Raphael and Soledad were standing at the entrance, looking at each other in confusion. The guests were slowly moving to their seats, talking among themselves. They could hear separate phrases. What a touching story. Good for the boy for defending his grandmother. And the parents were so screwed up. The restaurant manager came up to Raphael and asked him something, probably whether he could start the banquet. His son nodded, still looking confused. Palomita, I turned to my daughter-in-law. Where are your parents? Over there, at the third table, she pointed to an elderly couple in smart clothes. Mom, in a pink dress. Dad, in a gray suit. They're very anxious to meet you. And I want to meet them too. They're wonderful people. Dad works as a mechanic in a factory. Mom works in a kindergarten as a cook. Very simple and kind. I looked at Palomita's parents and thought about how different families are. These are the people who would probably never kick a grandmother out of their own child's wedding. Raphael and Soledad finally made their way to their table. He walked with his head down. She walked with her head very straight, but I could see she was uncomfortable. Their table was quite far away from the table of honor. Gustavo must have seated them that way on purpose. The banquet began. The host, a young man in a brightly colored jacket, came up on stage and began to entertain the guests. He told jokes, held contests, invited friends of the bride and groom to perform. And now, said the host, the floor is given to the parents of the groom. Raphael reluctantly got up from his seat. He slowly reached the microphone, took it in his hands, and remained silent for a long time, looking into the hall. Dear guests, he finally began, today is a happy day for our family. My son Gustavo is marrying a beautiful girl, Palomita. He spoke the right words, but without warmth of heart. He congratulated the young couple, wished them happiness, love, prosperity, everything as it should be. But when he got to the traditional part that the whole family is happy about this event, he hesitated and stopped talking. The bride and groom, shouted one of the guests. Bitter! Gustavo and Palomita kissed to the applause of the audience. Raphael handed the microphone to the host and hurried back to his seat. And now a word to the parents of the bride, announced the host. Palomita's father, a stocky man with a kind face, took the microphone and spoke simply and cordially. My friends, today we are giving our daughter into good hands. Gustavo is a wonderful boy. We loved him from the first day, and his family are very good people. He turned to our table. I especially want to congratulate the groom's grandmother, Senora Esperanza. Palomita told me what a wonderful woman you are, how much you love your grandson. Thank you for raising such a good boy. The hall erupted in applause. I felt myself blushing, but it was very pleasant to hear such words. After the speeches, the dancing began. The first dance was performed by the young people, a slow waltz to a beautiful melody. Gustavo and Palomita twirled in the center of the hall, looking into each other's eyes, and it was obvious that they were really happy. Then their parents joined them. Octavio, Palomita's father, asked his wife Carmen to dance. Raphael reluctantly got up and walked over to Soledad. They too came to the dance floor, but they danced stiffly, without pleasure. Grandmother, Gustavo came up to me when the music ended. Will you dance with me? Honey, I haven't danced for a long time. So what? Today's a special day. He held out his hand to me, and I couldn't say no. We walked to the center of the room to a new slow tune. Gustavo danced carefully, holding me so I wouldn't trip. Thank you, I said softly in his ear. For what? For not leaving me. For making my parents apologize. They didn't apologize, Grandma. But they didn't say anything. They didn't insist that I leave. Because they realized they were wrong. You think so? I know. I saw the way Daddy looked when you danced with me. He was embarrassed. When the dance was over, Palomita's parents came up to me. Carmen, a full-figured, good-natured woman, kissed me on both cheeks. Senora Esperanza, at last we've met. Palomita has told me so much about you. And I have heard a lot about you, I replied. You have raised a wonderful daughter. And you, a beautiful grandson, intervened Octavio. This boy is gold, hardworking, honest, kind. Our Palomita is happy with him. We talked for almost half an hour. Carmen and Octavio were very simple and warm people. They talked about their daughter, were interested in my life, shared their plans for the future. Where will the young people live? I asked. For the time being, Carmen answered. Our house is big, we have enough rooms, and then we'll see. Maybe they'll rent their own apartment. Gustavo said he wanted to take out a loan to buy a house. He wants to, Octavio laughed, but his salary is small. A courier doesn't earn much. Nothing, said Carmen. Young, healthy, they will achieve everything. The main thing is that they love each other. The evening continued. The guests ate, drank, danced, took pictures. The host held contests. Children ran between the tables. Musicians played cheerful and lyrical melodies. I sat at the table of honor and watched what was happening. From time to time, guests came up to me. Gustavo's friends, colleagues, distant relatives. Everyone was very polite and friendly. Many said that Gustavo often talked about his beloved grandmother. And Raphael and Soledad sat at their table all evening. They almost did not talk to other guests, did not participate in competitions, danced only when it was absolutely necessary. It was obvious they were uncomfortable. Several times I caught my son's eye. He looked at me strangely. Not with anger as in the morning, but with some incomprehensible expression. Maybe he was really ashamed of his behavior. About 9 o'clock in the evening, when the banquet was coming to an end, Palomita leaned over to me. Senora Esperanza, may I ask you something? Of course, my dear. We have a tradition. The eldest woman in the family blesses the young. You're the oldest of Gustavo's relatives. Could you give us your blessing? I was confused. Blessing the young is a very responsible and solemn thing to do. Usually it is done by parents in extreme cases, grandparents if the parents are not alive, but not with the groom's parents alive. Palomita, honey, but Gustavo's dad and mom are here. We've already talked to Gustavo. He wants you to do the blessing. And the parents? What about the parents? Gustavo spoke up. They didn't behave properly today. They should think about their behavior. But Gustavo, Grandma, please, this is very important to me. I looked toward the table where Raphael and Soledad were sitting. They were talking quietly, not paying attention to us. Good, I agreed. The announcer announced the blessing ceremony. All the guests stood up and the hall fell silent. Gustavo and Palomita knelt in front of me, as is tradition. I put my hands on their heads and said, "My dear children, Gustavo and Palomita, today you have become husband and wife. May your love be strong and long. May peace and understanding always reign in your home. May you have healthy children and enough strength to bring them up. May troubles pass you by and joy be in abundance. I bless you for a long and happy family life." "Thank you, grandmother," Gustavo said quietly. "Thank you," Palomita repeated. The hall erupted in applause. Many of the guests wiped their tears. The blessing ceremony is always very touching. When the young people stood up, I saw Raphael coming toward me. He was walking slowly, with his head down, and it was obvious that he was struggling. "Mother," he said, stopping beside me, "may I talk to you?" "Of course. But not here. Let's go out on the terrace." We walked across the hall to the restaurant's outdoor terrace. From here, we had a beautiful view of the sea. It was quiet, with only the splashing of the waves and muffled music coming from the hall. "Mom?" Raphael was silent for a long time, then spoke softly. "I want to apologize." I didn't say anything, waiting for him to continue. "What Soledad and I did was wrong. We had no right to forbid you from coming to Gustavo's wedding." "Raphael, let me finish, please. I realize I behaved terribly. The day we fought over the cafe and when I called you, I said things you shouldn't say to your mother. You were upset. That's no excuse, Mom. I just really wanted to solve our money problems. I thought selling the cafe would help the family. And when you said no, I got angry. And now? Now I realize I was wrong. It's your property, your right to decide what to do with it. And the memory of your father is more than just words." We stood in silence, looking at the sea. Raphael looked tired and old. "Mom, can you forgive me?" I turned to him. "My son, my only child. Yes, he behaved terribly, but he did apologize." "Of course I forgive him. You're my son." "Thank you." He hugged me, and I felt a heavy weight lifted off my soul. "And Soledad?" "Soledad wants to apologize too, but she's too shy to come over." "Let her come over. I'm not angry." We went back to the hall. Raphael came up to his wife and said something to her. Soledad got up and came toward me. "Esperanza," she said as she approached, "I too want to apologize. I behaved inappropriately. All right, Soledad, let's forget about it." "Thank you. Thank you for blessing the young people so beautifully." I could see how touched they were. The rest of the evening passed in a completely different atmosphere. Raphael and Soledad moved to a table closer to us, began to socialize with other guests, even participated in contests. I could see that the weight had been lifted not only from my soul, but also from theirs. And Gustavo stayed with me all evening. He brought me something delicious, or told me a funny story, or just sat next to me and held my hand. "Grandma," he said when the banquet was over, "thank you for today. Thank you, honey, for not letting my parents send me away." "Oh yeah, you can't have a wedding without Grandma." When we were saying goodbye, Palomita gave me a big hug. "Mrs. Esperanza, now you're my grandmother too. May I call you that?" "Of course, my dear, I'll be very happy." I drove home happy and peaceful. What could have been the worst day of my life had become one of the most beautiful. My grandson was getting married, and I was there for him. I saw his happiness, blessed his family life, and met a wonderful daughter-in-law. And most importantly, the family was reunited again.